Okay guys, we're just going to jump right into this one, no introduction or anything. This is going to be the teardown of the Alienware M15 R3. And this one, I may not tear it all the way down, but we are going to tear it down enough so that we can repaste it with our Cryonaut Thermal Grizzly that I just got in the other day. So we first start by flipping it over. We can see we have several screws on the back. Each one of those will need to be removed. Second one comes out. Now I found it easiest to pop this off by just gently lifting up on this lid. You'll hear it kind of pop off, and then it'll slide away, and we are done with the bottom cover. We can set that off to the side. Now, the first thing that you always want to do when working on a laptop is unplug the battery. Here we can see our large 86 watt hour battery, and the cable coming out of it is just going into this plug. To remove it, you just simply slide it to the right, fold that back, and then we will actually proceed to take the battery out. It looks like there is a row of screws along the top and the bottom that we will take out. Alright, now that I have removed all those retention screws, we should be able to just lift this battery up and out very carefully, and we can set that off to the side. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove our NVMe drives here. Again, just set those off to the side. I think we can leave this one on. I do not believe that it's required that we take that one off. It looks like it's part of the main board. So we'll peel back our plastic covering now. Do our best. Now it looks like it goes up under there. Alright, so the next thing that we got to do is we got to take this back port cover off, and we can see here there's a screw here, and I looked at the manual just so that we know, and there is a screw here and somewhere over here as well. So we'll take all four of those out, and then we should be able to slide this whole kind of back port cover off. Oh, there we go. Alright, so I just had to wiggle it around a little bit, and that is now coming off, and we can see that it is indeed connected to this cable, which I'm guessing controlled the LED strip along the back. Now that that's exposed, we can kind of remove this, set that off to the side, and on this cable, you'll just gently pull that straight back towards the back of the laptop, and we will set that off to the side. I'm going to take these two screws and just kind of set them in the back so I remember where they go. Alright, we've got a lot more exposed now, and you know, I'm actually thinking, guys, that this isn't going to be as bad as we thought. We can see there's a couple of daughter boards and stuff in here, but I think that all we have to do is if we just take 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe there's a few under here, 5, 6. It looks like there's about 6 screws, and we can flip this main board over, and that's what we want to get to. Which is going to be interesting from a pasting perspective, because it's like I'll have to paste them, turn them over, and then push them down. But we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to go ahead and actually let's just take a peek under here real quick, and with this one we'll just slide straight out, and as we pull that up gently tuck that over. That's our display cable. Actually, that's not the display cable. That must be the power for the display. Anyways, we can see that we did reveal one more screw. So I'm going to go ahead and take those out now. Alright, so one thing that I probably should have done first, and we'll bring it in here, is here we've got our cable that runs the display, and there's just like a little piece of retention tape here that we'll need to peel up. You know, try to save it if you can, but it's honestly not necessary. So, and I'll actually zoom in on this. I'm going to try not to like zoom in and out too much, but this is one of those things that's kind of important. So, on the back side of this, you'll see there's a tiny latch, and you can lift that up and push it down. So what you're going to want to do is you lift that latch up, and then you're going to pull this cable straight back towards you, and then that's going to lift out, and it looks like there's a secondary plug that's just to the left of it. So, you know, we can see that here now that I've pulled it out, but that one actually comes straight up. So you'll pull this big one straight back, and you'll pull that next one over straight up, and that's going to release that cable. It looks like they have kind of taped it down along those chips, so we'll gently move that out to the side, and we can see that is released there. Alright, so there's a few more screws that I got to do here. There's one. Okay guys, I removed a few more screws here, and I ran into another thing. So this little ribbon thing here, it actually is a cable that goes from this daughter board up, so be very careful, and you're going to want to take both sides of that off. And they have these big kind of disc screws on them, so that'll be easy to identify later, but very gently, and I'll show you if I can get it up close enough. I don't even know if that's focusing or not, but you can kind of see there's a little gold contact pin in there. So this is actually a ribbon cable, so be very careful with that. From there we have one more cable that's just right down here, and on these ones, I'll bring it in a little bit closer if I can. See here. Alright, there we go. On these ones, it's pretty easy. There's just a little black thing, and you'll flip that straight up. And it might be hard to see on the video, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when you have this thing out on the bench in front of you. So you'll flip that little switch up, and then just gently ease that ribbon cable out. There we go. And you can see that pops out there. And you can fold that back. It does look like I need to take off this plastic frame for where our solid states were kind of mounted into. So we'll do that now. And it looks like I didn't notice. It looks like that's actually part of the main board as well. So we've got our fans that are plugged in here, and we'll just gently back those out. Get a fingernail on both sides and then just kind of wiggle them and it'll pop out. I don't recommend doing it by the cables. These cables are very small. But if you look at these, you'll see that they have like little wings on the back of them, and it's good. You can get your fingernail on there. Just kind of wiggle it back and forth directly from the connector itself and pull it out. It is possible, and you don't want to do it, to just completely rip the wiring off of your fan there. And That's not that big of a deal if you do it. I mean, the fan is certainly cheaper to replace than like the port, because you'd have to replace the whole motherboard. But all right, so now I think we are ready, and I'm just trying to be very careful here because there's likely some connectors on the bottom side that we have to watch out for. And I'm still feeling this is definitely still connected somehow. So let me get over the top of it here a little more so I can see there's some screws down there. I wouldn't have suspected that those would be. So some of this, guys, is, it could be that this thing is just pasted down. Or I shouldn't say could be. It is pasted down, and sometimes that provides some tension as well. But what I'm feeling here feels like it may be mounted from the bottom side as well. So it looks like we have to take more out. So I'm going to start with the fans. We'll take the fans out. Alright, so I unscrew the two fans, and this actually does make sense now that I think about it. I forgot, so from the fans to the back side of that is those heat pipes, and those definitely need to be clamped down. So the fans and that whole main board, they all are going to come out kind of together. And it looks like, unfortunately, I need to take this daughter board out here as well, because the lip of this fan is kind of up underneath there. I mean, I might be able to slide that out, but it's alright. We'll just take the daughter board off real quick. Better safe than sorry. And a second one right here. Alright, we can see, I think it goes into our speakers and probably some front lighting. So that's there. Now, I should be able to lift that daughter board out, and there's our board. We'll set that to the side there. Alright, so we've got that daughter board out. Set that off to the side. Just adjusted my upper camera there. Okay, so the last thing we've got to do, and this is one thing that I didn't know or didn't notice yesterday, is the Wi-Fi card on this is already soldered in. So I don't think that I've ever gone through and upgraded a Wi-Fi card in a system before, but you know, if there's some of you out there that are into that, that might be something that you need to take in consideration as well, is that this is all built in. So again, just very gently, these can be very delicate, so just kind of get up under there with a small screwdriver or something and just very gently kind of lift those up, and they'll pop off. And then what we're going to have to do here is pull this tape up, wiggle that, and maneuver it out of the way. Again, just kind of fold that up into the back, and now we can see that's lifting up like it should. Dang it. Okay, so I'm still seeing, and this is why you want to be just gentle and careful with this, I'm still seeing that it is somehow retained to this daughter board over here. So we will go ahead and just remove that. So that we don't have any problems whatsoever. Alright, let's try this again. Alright, yep. I think we got it this time, guys. We can see a ribbon cable here that I forgot. Again, this is one that just has a little retention clasp, so if you just flip that straight up, you should be able to pull that ribbon cable straight out the back, just like that. And that looks like that goes to our trackpad or something. And then just very gently, so I'm you know, and again, this is just another one that I missed, but you'll flip that retention clasp up and that pops right out. But that's why you're gentle, guys. As you're lifting this thing up, you just go very slowly, and as soon as you feel the slightest bit of pressure, you know that something's wrong and you got to recheck everything. So I did not you know, read the full teardown thing. I kind of breezed through it to see if there's anything super crazy. But this is it. We now have our main board out, and so let's flip this over. And here we can see, I think for the first time on YouTube, at least unless someone beat me to this, we can see the cooling solution that they have out in the open. So what I'm going to do for right now is I'm going to take the rest of this and kind of set it off to the side because we don't need it right now. And here we have our main board and our heat sinks. Okay. So I've taken a look at this, guys, and it's a little smaller, so I think I can probably bring you in just a little bit closer. I want to try to keep the whole thing in the frame as much as possible. So I had a chance to kind of just peek over this thing real quick. I don't see anything that looks too crazy. We have a couple of screws down here that look like they, you know, are kind of part of the thermal solution for some of the additional chips on here. And then we also have, of course, the retention screws for the main heat sinks themselves with the heat pipes. You know, as far as the heat pipes on this go, it's pretty interesting. It looks like a pretty decent thing. Actually is not the most I have ever seen on some of these laptops, but you know, these actually do look maybe like they're a little bit thicker than is standard. So maybe that helps. Anyways, I'm going to start taking these off and we'll see what other issues we may run into. Alright, so I think that's it. And you know, I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but when you're looking at this thing, you'll see that there's numbers next to every screw. So I think for the most part, I took them out in reverse order. When I put them back in, I'll put them back in 1 to 10. But it looks like there's 10 of them here. So I think if I just gently... And this is where it gets a little tricky. So you want to be extra sure that you've got everything out, everything unplugged that you can possibly think of. Because the thermal paste does, you know, it does kind of stick a little bit, and so you may have to, alright, there we can see it's kind of come up on that side. We'll apply a little bit of pressure right around these heat pipes on this side. And that's starting to break loose. And there we go. And that whole thing is now uncovered. But really that's what it comes down to. Now, this is what I'm going to say, and I feel like this is definitely a huge part of why I have been having heating problems with this thing. So, and this is interesting. This is purely just a manufacturer's defect. So Dell, if you're watching this, you know, get this fixed. Hopefully that's kind of in focus for you guys. But look at what we have here. We can tell that this kind of guard plate or heat dissipation plate, I'm not really sure what it is that's around the CPU, but it was installed incorrectly. And on this one, we can see that there's a big gap there. this whole thing should be shifted that way, and it should have sat flush. And what happened was it wasn't. And if I kind of turn this to the side, you can see in the light there, this is all bent and kind of crunched in. And what that has done, if we look at our thermal paste, we can see that on the left side of the chip, it's actually a lot thinner. And then there's a huge cakey part up here. And what's happened is when they pushed that chip down with the heatsink, this part of the heatsink was higher than this part. So this was filled up with almost completely just thermal paste. And thermal paste is good, but that's not what we want. We want as much copper to die contact as possible, because copper has a way better thermal efficiency than even thermal paste. Thermal paste is just supposed to fill those microscopic gaps. So essentially all of the testing that I have done, guys, is basically invalidated. I mean, the heatsink was installed incorrectly, and I would expect to have absolutely abysmal results with this. So I'm going to jostle this around, get it to where I feel comfortable with it again, and this is just kind of a light plate of copper, so I'm sure that I can get it working. But yeah, that was a huge miss, and you know, I wish I had a better close-up camera. Actually, what I can do is this. If I widen this out, and I'll stand up so you guys can see this a little better. So this is what we get. There we go. There's some good lighting. So you can see those wrinkles, and then you can see here on the standoff where that part is kind of coming up over a little bit. And you can see where it's even got munched a little bit as they put pressure down on this plate. So, and then over here on this one again, we see that that was completely shifted. So 100% just installed incorrectly. And that is, you know, I'm not saying that the i9 is going to have perfect thermals, but this right here is mind-blowing, and this has definitely negatively impacted my thermals. No doubt in my mind whatsoever. I'm going to put this on, and I wouldn't be surprised if we even see a 20%, or I should say a 20-degree thermal drop in what's going on here. So let's do that, shall we? Let's get into this thing, and you know, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little sad that Alienware didn't come through for me, and you know, obviously they had some issues at the factory with the way that this was mounted, but on that same note, it wasn't necessarily a design flaw on their part, it was a manufacturing flaw. So I'm not even sure if like this whole thing is stuck down, and that is going to be, I was kind of hoping it just sat there, but I really don't want to break it. I'm hoping that that guy that comes out to replace my motherboard, that this piece is considered, you know, kind of part of the motherboard, and this will get replaced as well. So what I'm going to do, guys, is this, and you know, I think that the biggest thing is I just need to make sure that this corner down here isn't over the top of my standoff, and that this stuff is able to be moved off of that die in such a way. I apologize if I'm not keeping all of this in screen, guys. It kind of got to maneuver around this a little bit. There, okay, it's peeling up a little bit. What I don't want is I really don't want to rip that copper foil down there, because that is, you know, I'm sure that that is acting as kind of a heat sink for some of these chips along the side here. So I'm trying to be really, really careful as I peel this up just ever so gently. I don't think it would have a crazy impact if it was a little bit ripped. Alright, there we go. So I got it off, and you can see that it's flexible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install it correctly here, or as correctly as I can. So the side of it's still going to be, you know, it's not going to be perfect and smooth, but I got that back down. That's below the standoff on the side there. You know, Alright, so I got that all pushed down there. You can see it's a little bit uglier. I'm guessing that hopefully the motherboard ships with a brand new one of these, and you just set it down on top right where it's supposed to go and you have no problems. But what I will say is I have fixed the standoff issue over here. There's now not a big wrinkle along this side, and most importantly now, we don't have anything that's going to screw with the standoff of our heatsink onto that die. So to clean these off, you can get the alcohol wipes. Those are perfect. Those are great. But realistically, I do paper towels and alcohol. So I'm going to grab those and we'll clean all this off. We'll clean up the actual heat sinks. And then basically, guys, we're done and we just need to put it back together. Alright, so I've got my paper towel here. I'm just going to kind of fold it up a little bit so I can kind of get that corner, because what I want is I want to wipe up this thermal paste as much as possible, but I don't want to wipe it off into the rest of the chip. Now, most of the time, and I'm guessing 100% almost positive that the stuff that Alienware puts on their stuff is not thermally conductive, so if you did get some on these, you're fine. Now, if you're doing something crazy, or using like some of the liquid metal type things, those absolutely do conduct electricity, and if you get that on any of the surrounding chip, then you're going to have some serious problems and it's going to short out your board. So you know, for this stuff though, not as important. We just want to make sure that we're cleaning it all the way off. So I like to start kind of dry, and what I'll do is I'll do one side, kind of fold it over, and do the same thing, you know, and then what you can do is kind of just fold it back and you kind of get the point. That way you're getting a lot of wipes for the same paper towel. And I accidentally touched the CPU one as I was holding down the motherboard. So we're just going to go ahead and clean the top of this down. I'm going to try to get some of that excess out. And then once you've done that several times, what you can do is kind of just widen it out, fold over your dirty part, and then try again. I don't know. That's Advanced Vector, how to use a paper towel 101, I guess. I'm sure you guys have all used paper towels before, but it's just kind of the method that I use now that I've done these. And I have done quite a few of this type of stuff. So, alright. So now you can see that the chip is pretty good. You can even see the labeling on here now. We can see NVIDIA, Taiwan, all that other good stuff. So this is actually the GPU, and this is the CPU over here. I kind of have those backwards. In the past, usually the CPUs are still square. But anyways, so now what I'll do is I'll kind of rip off the old used stuff, and we'll kind of get this and refold it a little bit, and then you just want to get just a little bit, and you'll kind of let that soak in. So you've got some on there, and then I like to even fold it down onto the dry part again and just kind of take it between my fingers like that, and you're going to just kind of rub it in there all around the top. And you know, one of the things about alcohol, and I guess I have never, you know, if it's thermally conductive, I don't think it's very. But the thing about alcohol and why you use that is, number one, it is a good solvent, but number two, and I don't even know if you guys can see that or not, but it dries so fast. So by the time you get this whole thing back together, if you did have a few drops or something that landed, it would have all dried, and even if it is conductive, it's not going to mess up your stuff at all. So again, I'm just going to kind of, you want to make sure that's nice and clean as you can get it. Because what you want, like I said, the optimal goal, if our machining tolerances were perfect, we would just set copper right down on top of that and it would be a perfect fit, and that's the way that it works. But we don't have a perfect world, so we have to use thermal paste to fill up the microscopic gaps, which is better than air, because air has a horrible conductivity for heat, a conductivity rating. And I'm kind of noticing that this on this side is kind of coming up on the edge of the chip. I'm just going to see if I can peel that back a little bit. There. Alright. That's not perfect. It's a little bit ugly, but it'll have to do. Okay. So we got that one pretty well cleaned off, you know, and again, you just want to make sure that you don't have any of your paper towel fuzz left over. You know, I'll be honest, whenever I have some of the alcohol wipes, I usually use those. They don't leave so much residue behind, but, or I should say like the little paper towel fluff. But if all you have is paper towels, it's going to be just plenty fine. Alright, and then we're just going to kind of do the same thing over here for our CPU chip. We'll kind of just wipe off the lion's share of it. Grab another paper towel here. Gonna get something that's a little bit more manageable. And just scrape that off. Alright, again we can see we've got that pretty well cleared off. And that one actually cleaned off a little bit better than the NVIDIA one. So we'll take a dab of our stuff, kind of let that soak in real quick, and then I'm just going to run that over the top of that die to try to remove any final particles that may be on there. And this is what it comes down to, guys. Realistically, you're never going to be able to have everything perfect, you know, but these things are also designed for tolerances. As you can see before, even with a complete gap and most of this right side of the chip just being thermal, or just being directly to thermal paste and then thermal paste up to copper, my machine was still operating and I was actually still able to you know, do okay. Was it perfect? No. Do I expect to get far better results now? Absolutely. But that being said, it was still functioning. So if you do happen to have a little microscopic piece of dust or something on there, you're gonna be just fine. All right, so that's good. That's what we have there. I'm gonna actually set that off to the side now really quick. And on these ones, we're gonna do the same thing. Now, you might notice all these blue pads. And what you can do if you want is, they probably don't make a kit for this particular laptop yet, but sometimes you'll see kits, if you're watching this several months after this is released, where they just have all these pre-cut out for everything that you want, and you can replace all of these thermal pads in here, or you can buy thermal pad, and I think I even have some. If I happen to ruin some here, I can just replace it, but that you can cut into your own squares that go on all those little dies and stuff that we have underneath here. Now, that being said, this stuff is still new, it's still good, it all came up just right, so I'm going to do my best to just leave it in place. You can do the same, put it back on top of there, you should have no issues. If you want to, you can replace it. If I had been using this laptop for a year, and then I had come out in and done all this stuff, I probably would replace it, just because, why not? You already have the whole thing open. These little thermal pads are fairly cheap, but anyways, for right now, I'm not going to do that. And again, maybe that Dell technician, when he comes out to swap out my actual whole motherboard, maybe he'll replace all that stuff as part of the process. I don't know. I'll definitely let you guys know after that happens. So we're just going to try to be careful here. And we'll wipe this crap up kind of as carefully as we can. So I'm actually kind of thinking what's interesting in retrospect now is, now that I think about it, it was actually our GPU that was mounted incorrectly, but I was not seeing any heat problems with that whatsoever. So I don't know. You know, it's theoretically, I guess I should be able to overheat or overclock my my GPU a little better now. but I wasn't really having any problems with heat before. I can kind of see some of this residue there, but I think it's going to be all right. The most important thing on this, guys, and you can see this little copper section is a little bit bigger than the die that's on your laptop, and that's fine. But I'm just trying to get every little bit that I can, and this one seems to have, I don't know, something on there. So let me run over it one more time since I've touched it with my finger directly. Just get all that finger grease off of there. And we'll call that good. There's still a tiny bit of paste left in some of the corners, but those are not nearly as critical as making sure that we get the big portion of where that die is going to sit on there. So I'm going to kind of do the same thing over here on our GPU heatsink. And we'll go ahead and get another paper towel. Just gotta try to smear this stuff up, basically, is what it comes down to, guys. Sometimes if you've had a laptop for a couple of years and you do this paste will be all dry and crusty, and it will have definitely lost efficiency over the years. So that's on a dry paper towel. We can see now I'm going to put a little bit of alcohol on here, and now we should be able to get that bright shine like we got on the other side once it really starts pulling up the rest of that thermal paste. Oops, and I did kind of munge that corner up a little bit there, but I think it'll be alright. So let's go over this just a little bit more. Some of the edges, just to get them perfect. Well, not perfect, but just to get them as good as we can. Okay, guys, so I've applied the thermal paste, and I didn't show putting the thermal paste on for a slew of reasons. One of which is I just know that there are going to be the people out there who are like, oh, you put too much, you put too little. I've seen it happen on other channels and stuff like that. So if you do not know how to apply thermal paste, then by all means, please YouTube search. Linus Tech Tips does a really good one, as does, I can't remember, there's one more channel out there that I saw that does a pretty good thing on thermal paste. They've done testing on all the different ways to apply it and stuff like that. So go ahead, knock yourselves out, become experts, on that, but that's just not something that I really wanted to get into with this particular video. So you've got your top here. I've applied my thermal paste. We've cleaned both things, and now we just need to reattach this. So the most important thing is just to make sure that it's going to go straight on. My head is going to get in the way here a little bit as I look to make sure I'm lowering it directly on, but that's kind of the whole objective here. You're going to lower this down directly on top of where it needs to sit. And then you're just going to tighten all your screws down. Alright, so that's pretty good. I can see all my screw holes are lined up now. And so now we basically just do the whole thing in reverse, guys. Now, like I said, these are all numbered, so you might as well just follow them from 1 all the way up to 10 now. Which is what we'll do. So we start off with 1 in this corner.